Hello, happy Monday to everyone. I am Samuel Trapp. This is International Flavor. You are listening to Damn Radio, coming to you live from the Lake Ozark Real Estate of the Art Studio. And we do this, Monday through Thursday for you from 7:30 to 9 o'clock. And then on Friday, we do another iteration of Civic Outlaws. I encourage you to go to civicoutlaws.com, see our current events and all of the shows out there that have been done in the past. And then I encourage you to go out to internationalflavor.com and check out the show from there with all the interesting rhetoric, as they call it, the political babble, as some may also call it. And I also encourage you to listen as much as possible to damradio.com/live or /podcast, should you choose to listen not at the proper slotted window. You can go to damradio.com/schedule to get the goods, to get the goodies and find out when all of the shows are up and coming, and what the schedule says as far as going deep into the lunacy of the day. And there's plenty of that to go about. Tell you what, I got a lot done this somewhat cold but otherwise beautiful weekend, and maybe I'm whining over the cold because it really wasn't all that bad. I helped a sister build a bathroom. Well, her husband, she was there too, and so I suppose I was helping the both of them. Yeah, that's probably true. And if you haven't built a bathroom lately, I encourage you to get in the mood. It's a lot of fun. And it's even more fun when it's out in the middle of nowhere. So there you go. I encourage you to go out to the middle of nowhere and create a bathroom. Could be a lot of fun. So do it. I listened to plenty of commentary, of talk, and researched a couple of things. One of the most, I don't know, revealing, I suppose, is how things are so different and yet the same. I tell you what, everybody knows that I have not been for the illusion that for the illusion of war, or the what do they always used to say in my church class when I was in Sunday school? In that time there shall be wars and rumors of wars. And if you're Monty Python, and you can say, and during those times a man shall steal another man's hammer, and no one will be able to tell where it is they left that thing which they only remembered a few days before, but they can't remember where it is now. If you're going to be quoting scripture and talking about the future, you know, Monty Python is a good source for all of your entertainment value. Or you can listen to all of the countries that are speaking today. So I listened to, let me give you a broad smattering, as it were, of people that I spoke about, I didn't speak to any of them. I listened to over the weekend or on Friday. I listened to a guy named Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, who was a former chief of staff of the U.S. Secretary of State. And he had a long, military career and also worked at the White House. He's an interesting individual. That was a seriously good speech or discussion. I listened to Richard Wolff, a professor from New York, that another half an hour with him. I did another John Mearsheimer round. I did one with Rachel Blevins, who I like to listen to. Alex Christoforou, Dr. Mohamed Marandi, and he was with a guy named what was that guy's name? I remember Cyrus Jansen. Cyrus Jansen is a young, politically motivated. I don't know if he's challenged. He challenges the politics. That is for sure. He always seems to have an economic angle, which I kind of like. And he interviewed a guy named Mohamed Marandi. And Marandi... So he's from kind of inside. He is in Iran, and he knows some things. There was the fuel equals the blood of war. There was that was the Alex Christoforo one, and the Houthis are entering the war. And then I watched watched one called The Big Game. March 30 of 2026, and it says the game is for Odessa. And this was a Russian language version, so I listened to two Russian language ones. There's this one, which is a big game over Odessa. Now, I think I may start with that, with where... all of those things, they could fill an entire week of talking, especially with me. And I watched Trump talking about the gifts that he received from Iran, nonsensical. That he didn't get any gifts from them. Those Pakistani gifts. The gifts came to Pakistan, but if you want to claim them as your own, I suppose you could. And but it's 10 ships that get to go through the Straits of Hormuz, but they're going to Pakistan. They're Pakistani ships. They paid in yuan to get out, and that is. The funny part of it all is that the mistruths that are being talked about the whole way through, the bombing. I watched one, the Rachel Blevins one really got me going a little bit. And that has not a whole lot to do with Iran. It had to do with Lebanon, and had to do with the killing of journalists that nobody in the West is talking about. And she was pretty upset about it, and she wasn't interviewing anyone, and rightly so. She showed some pictures and some stuff like that came into that area. I'm going to see if I can find this commentary. Oh yeah, that's Alex. And let me find, that's the circular, Zelensky. Zelensky's cruise in the Middle East looking for gas, okay? He's looking for gas. And so all of these things have kind of come together into a big circle. And so this is not good, okay? So let's do a quick little review of all of these. So basically, we're going to start with the framework, which is, if you listen to Wolff and Wilkerson, which, I made an effort to do so, and they speak with real numbers. They give you real stories. And I want to go all the way around through this circle about the mistake of Iran that I believe is happening before our very eyes. Now, I had my own theory upon this, and you've heard bits and pieces of it before, and nobody knows what the hell Trump is thinking. He don't know what he's thinking. He changes it every morning, and it just changes. I think it is something that has to do, in part, like when I heard Joe Kent, the guy who left the service of the president here a couple of weeks ago, Middle Eastern guy that said it was a big mistake to go into Middle East. I agree with that analysis completely, by the way. I also believe that my thought process doesn't matter anyway, not any more than anybody else's, and where you choose to get your information is up to you. But The fact is I'm fairly well versed in all of this stuff, and I am a cynical and a disbeliever. I do not believe the excuses that government gives to work just because the government gives them. I never say, oh, gee, this politician is better to listen to than that politician. You know, I have my thoughts on the matter, and I try to listen to them, but I think they're all full of crap. And they don't tell you the truth no matter what anyway. It's like they don't have the capacity because they're always trying to sell you something. It's like the used car dealer, just because he happens to be telling you the truth about this particular thing, don't mean you should believe him about everything. You know, and that's the same for political commentators. That's the same for people on CNN. It's, you know, the same for people who aren't. Same for people who do not have the right or the desire, either the right or the desire, to speak with you on what they think, not what their backers think, not what the big money man thinks that's supporting them, not that, but what they actually think themselves. And you cannot take the money and the backing out of a national politician, and hell, you can barely do it out of a state politician, although your chances are a little bit better and of that. But you can't believe what they say because it's always being presented to you through someone else's lens, not yours. Unless you're the guy backing them, you know, if you've bought yourself a politician, well, more power to you. You know, good luck to you. But I don't trust you any more than I trust them. You have the goal of increasing your own power. So just understand that when I listen to these or when I spout this off myself, at least for me, I'm not beholden to somebody else's opinion. I'm not. And you can convince me to change mine, but not just by telling me that's, you know, what I need to do. That's not going to happen. So I've always thought this is an economic, when Venezuela happened, everybody knows I went, what the hell are we doing? And then immediately after that, we end up in a unsustainable action, another one in the Middle East. In the Middle East, it's, you know, almost always about encircling Iran and taking out the biggest, largest oil interest in the world, you know, Iran. Well, arguably Russia now, but the biggest in the Middle East, right? And the biggest block to the U.S. controlling the oil out of the Middle East. Why do you think we're there? Why do you think we've ever been there? We've been there to control the oil, period. There's no other reason for us to be there, none whatsoever. And why do we need bases all over the Middle East? The only reason to justify it is oil, okay, and other natural products. You know, aluminum's over there in pretty big supply. Took a huge hit. There's plenty of other natural resources over that way. So I always thought that and when the pieces all fell together after the Strait of Hormuz was closed this time, and this has been a long time in the making, if you believe some of the Iranian strategists that are speaking, that, you know, this is, and now they're talking about closing the Red Sea, which will be another 15 to 20% of global supply of oil through the world, controlled by the Houthis, or able to be shut off by the Houthis. And you have the continued killing of people in Israel and in Lebanon by the Israelis, whether you believe those stories or not. So it's important to listen to somebody like Richard Wolff, who has a vested interest in all of those things. And at any rate, the theory that I've always had is this is an affront to China, and because the one in Venezuela was far too obvious. They lied to us about why they were there. We aren't there for narco-terrorism and to blow anybody up, and those that were paying attention knew that was bullshit from the beginning, because that is the smallest of the 5 biggies that are allegedly controlling narco-terrorism. And, that is nothing but we have a bigger appendage than you, and so we can go in and dictate what you're going to do with your oil. And it only came clean by Trump afterward, because he has to tell about his victory, and his victory all has to do with oil. And so he gets to go, look, we have the oil. Nothing has changed there, by the way. They have the next corrupt person in line, if you want to call it corrupt. That's how their country is run. That's just the way it is. And maybe it'll change someday, but that's not our gig. And by the way, they're still over there pounding. We're not completely out of that debacle. It's not like we walked away. Trump said, I'm going to control these people. Me. Marco Rubio's going to run Venezuela. And they think they're still doing it. So, but then we move straight into and that is leg number 1 knocked out from under, allegedly, China. Okay. Because they had $100 billion invested in that infrastructure that Trump gets to probably claim as his own too. And so now they're trying to do the same thing in Iran. That's why U.S. took the opportunity to follow along after Netanyahu declared his intentions and gave them the date for when and time for when he was going to attack. And according to Rubio, we knew he was going to do it, and it was a good opportunity for us to follow along. So those 2 things pretty much sealed the deal for me, knowing that this is an anti-China, anti-Russia measure, which I've talked about before. But here's the collapse part. Let's talk about the economy first and the war second, because what distinguishes this from every prior U.S. conflict is not just that another voluntary war, a war that we don't need to fight, frankly, that we have no business fighting right now. Another voluntary, a war of choice. This is our choice to go to war. It's not a necessity. This is not anything like that for us. Meanwhile, the people who are in the 2 big wars in the world, the Russians and the Iranians, and arguably the Chinese, if you're going to throw it in there, you have 3 existential threat wars, or at least 2, Russia and Iran. Those are existential threats. We're going to destroy you. NATO and America are going to attempt to destroy Russia. They miscalculated that. Now, Israel and America, and now Ukraine, are going to destroy Iran. These are existential threats to the countries of Russia and Iran. They must fight. They were not brought into this as a voluntary elective war, although that is what they try to sell you as this Putin's war, this is the Ayatollah's war. They were going to attack us first, so we had to attack them. Russia was going to attack us first, so we had to build up Ukraine and supply those nuts with all kinds of weapons so they could engage their hatred of Russia and all things Russian. By the way, over the weekend, I met a bunch of fellows from Latvia, and they're speaking Russian, and I went up to them and started speaking Russian. Tell you what, the hatred of Russia is alive and well with all those Baltic states, because those boys, they were looking anywhere but at me when I went. And I said, "Do you guys speak Russian?" I said, "You're speaking. I hear you're over here speaking Russian." It was really funny because they were speaking Russian until I walked up. They all were speaking Russian. Why? Because they come from various areas of Latvia, Lithuania, any of those Baltics, maybe Belarus, maybe somewhere in there. And they all speak Russian, but they don't want to. And so if you come up as an American and you're speaking Russian to them, and they know that they're speaking Russian, they want to show you that they aren't speaking Russian, because you're not supposed to like Russia. You're supposed to hate them, especially here in America. We're supposed to feel sorry for them because Russia is pounding them. And, geez, Russia's the big bad wolf. And it's... I think it's ridiculous that you hate. It's like us hating Mexicans, and we don't, but I mean hating Mexicans because they speak Spanish. It's nonsense. So we're going to discount Spanish, and that's they're still doing it. That shit's alive and well. So at any rate, the war has begun, and it's economy first, war second. Okay. And that the war has begun inside a structurally weak system already. It comes clear from Richard Wolff. You should listen to his theory, because it was strong. And it is, maybe that should be an anchor for everybody's thought process, because for Wolff, this isn't a military question at all. And for me, it's really not either. It's an economic one. More specifically, a question about whether the United States still has the financial architecture necessary to sustain the kind of war that it has chosen to enter. It's arithmetic, people. The United States entered this conflict already, carrying over $1 trillion in annual deficit. Already, our credit rating from all three bureaus has been downgraded to AA. Not AAA, we're AA. We're already dependent on borrowing to fund not only domestic programs, but the entire global military posture. And we have a fragile structure. You may not believe it, but it's fragile. Trump comes into office. He says, I'm going to fix all this, and we're going to bring in shit pots of money by tariffs. We're going to bring in all these tariffs. And he starts bringing in the money. People start anticipating the money. The Wall Street starts betting on the money. And possibilities begin to emerge. It goes, oh my gosh, he might actually pull something off. He may pull something off. He might actually reduce the deficit. Not so, young people. He immediately spent whatever he thought he was going to do by... Now think about this size increase in a military budget, which in 2024 was $800 billion, right? Which is a huge number. Okay, maybe not quite 900. Okay, this is almost 900. And this year, $1.5 trillion. Imagine that number. Okay, now you have to imagine that number because you couldn't fit it in a warehouse. All the cash, he couldn't fit it in there. Not even in cryptocurrency. Anyway, that amount of money, 900, let's call it 900 just to have a nice round number. What's it take to get from 900 to 1,500 billion, right? 900 billion to 1,500 billion. That is a 67% increase in the Department of War. 67% in 1 year. Now, where's that money going? Same old assholes it went to before, the military-industrial complex. That's where it's going. And you enter and you up it. Then you figure out you can't live within that number. And so you immediately ask Congress, because you got to start another war, and you're already way above this, by the way. You need another 200 billion. You have almost doubled, just for Iran, by the way. And you have now almost doubled your military budget in 1 year. Meanwhile, your tariffs are reversed by the Supreme Court. And everybody who's paid a tariff over the last year and a half wants it back. They want that money back. And judges are saying they're going to have to pay that money back. Well, where's it going to come from? You already don't have it. By the way, you have a AA rating. By the way, this means your interest rates are going to go up. Meanwhile, the economic balance is going down. And so, according to most economists, you have stagflation. Means interest rates are going up. But guess what else is going up at the same time? Inflation. That's what's happening. And that is happening. And how does Trump save it? He has to win. And he has to win and do something about China. And do something in his own mind, And he's already stuck in a war that, according to all popular commentators, even unpopular, this is now mainstream. He can't win this war. It's not going to be won, which is my fear, that when you can't win, what do? You escalate. And everybody's escalating. Everybody's making it more troublesome to continue, right? And so you're going to up it. Who are the most likely to throw a nuclear bomb in this scenario? It's friggin' Netanyahu. I'm telling you, it's Netanyahu. That guy loves his escalation, and he has the glory of God behind him. So there you have it. That is the $100 billion in new commitment, simultaneously losing revenue that he had expected on. Tariffs have been struck down. This, in plain language, is something that most war analysts don't touch anyway. It's the fiscal limits of the empire. The U.S. is not choosing to fight. It's choosing to fight not only is it choosing to fight, it's choosing to fight at a time when it has to borrow to do so. And when borrowing is now more expensive, more uncertain, and you got the war driving the spending. Spending increases borrowing. Borrowing pressures interest rates. Higher interest rates feed inflation. If inflation constrains domestic stability. Domestic stability limits how far the war can go, because the popularity of this war is minimal. The only people out there raising sabers, get this, Trump has a new press secretary. Guess who it is? Mark Levin. Well, I can't figure out I can't figure out how to tell people how they're going to love this war. So listen to Mark Levin. Get on and listen to Mark Levin. No, he's not skewed at all. Not remotely. He says, got to have 15,000 soldiers over there. You ain't getting into Iran with 15,000 soldiers. Well, you want some gnats on a horse? There you go. You want a couple 100,000? The American people will string you up for doing that. And a lot of them are ready to do so over 15,000. This is foolish. This is stupid. And it has nothing to do with us. Zelensky realizes it. Why do you think he's in Saudi Arabia and Qatar? And where else did he go this weekend? Bahrain. He went to all these places trying to figure out how to replace his natural gas because he can't get it. Why? Because Europe gets a lot of its supply through the Straits of Hormuz, Suez Canal, through Iranian channels that are going to be turned off in the Red Sea by the Houthis, or through Straits of Hormuz. And what did Russia do this past weekend, by the way? They shut off the gas supply. Now, they're trying to claim in Europe that, oh, by the way, this means that we're defeating Russia. Well, maybe so. Maybe it does. I don't think so, but maybe so. I'll give you some time to expand that theory, because I see it differently. Even if you bombed a couple of gas infrastructure places, right, inside of Russia, and Ukraine is attempting to do that because they're very frightened of Russia's new satellite system, which are going to level the recent advantages of the playing field, because Elon Musk was able to cut off Russian access to Starlink that they had stolen through a bunch of terminals that were coming through Ukrainian sources, right? And so now Russia has their own, and it's working, and it's working well. And so now they can now remember the warning of Zelensky going down into the Middle East and telling these countries that, look what's going on, don't you get it? Russia is taking satellite pictures and giving targeting data to Iran. Oh my God. And the world's up in arms over this. What has NATO and the United States been giving Ukraine for 5 years, nearly? We're in the 5th year, or longer, actually, because where do they get all of their intelligence? It's not developed by some grand Ukrainian military intelligence service. No, it's handed to them by England, by America. We are giving all of the targeting data. Who gave the pictures of the airplanes back last summer or whenever it was that they bombed the Russian airfields? Remember that? With the drones that came out? Who provided that information? So and that's where the Lavrov speech came in that I watched this weekend. That was extremely interesting. I tell you what, there's some very, very smart people analyzing this, and I listen to a lot of them, and all I get to do is spout it back out to you, hopefully picking and choosing all of those together. Wolff says this war is going to take us over a fiscal cliff. And that's not rhetoric, people. It's recognition that the U.S. is approaching a point where the ability to finance its domestic obligations and global military excursions simultaneously are going to break down. Now let's talk about that with the political dimension, because this is where Wolff observes New York and Mamdani. Now, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but think about this. Bring back politics all the way to New York. You want to know how terrible the impressions are of what Trump is doing right now. Take this as an example. If you think that Trump is going to sweep into the elections in November without some serious problems, there's something you need to think about. Trump's own Mar-a-Lago went Democrat, his area. And by the way, he used a mail-in ballot. How do you like that? He used a mail-in ballot in Mar-a-Lago, is what everybody is reporting. Now, did I see him do a mail-in ballot? Nope. But he didn't go to the field or didn't go to the polling place to vote. He sent in a mail-in ballot, and the candidate that he backed, I mean, in his own friends and neighbors area of Mar-a-Lago, didn't vote for him. Didn't vote for Trump's dude. And a Democrat took that district. And if you want to see what's happening, I mean, go back to the Mamdani. And Wolff brought this up. And this is something, I knew the pieces and parts, but I'd never heard it put together like this way. So I want you to this was not my original idea, not remotely. And the fact that the new guy, what is his name? Mamdani, I think. The new ruler, if you want to call him that, of New York, that he said during his election campaign, here's what he said. He said that if Netanyahu came to New York, he would have him arrested. He's Muslim. He's young. He isn't the same old, certainly not in the state of, in the city of New York or the state of New York. And according to Wolff, he was backed like 60-70% by the Jewish population in New York said that they supported this guy. That's how bad it is for Trump. They elected a socialist, they elected a Muslim, and they're all Jewish. And so he brought it home. I mean, this is unbelievable. And he's not just speaking as an economist. He's he's a resident in New York. He talked quite a bit about it. And they asked him to get into Iran. He goes, no. He goes, I'm not an expert in Iran. I see the economic signs of what's going on, and I know what the United States is up against before they ever get to enemy one in Iran, is being able to avoid this fiscal cliff. I mean, it's an interesting argument. You get a chance, you should go listen to him. Guy's name is Wolff, Professor Wolff. He's was on some talk show or another with a good guy. Next one is a guy named Wilkerson. Now, Wilkerson was former military. He was a military insider. He was up there pretty high. What he describes is something even more alarming. Now, this was a punch in the face, too. He said that he is embarrassed over the military. Now, frankly, I don't find any of them to be remotely believable anyway. He says that it's operational incoherence at the highest military levels of leadership. He didn't mince his words at all. He said this is the worst performance he has ever seen from U.S. leadership call. This is not casual criticism. It's a criticism from a guy who spent a career inside of it. And why does he say this? It's because... And this is my bitch about the whole thing. My complaint is the exact same. What's the mission, people? Really, what is the mission? Does anybody have a clear idea of what the mission is? You know, there are objectives. There are things that you can do. You know, when I'm Sergeant Trapp running through the woods of Germany or running through the deserts of Iraq, and I receive my set of orders. What's the mission? The mission has objectives like that you're going to take. You know, you're going to do this, but it also has the overall mission, and nobody knows what the mission is, which means they hardly know what the objectives can be to fulfill that mission, because, and it certainly is going to lead people to not be as committed. You don't know what your mission is. You don't just say, Sergeant Trapp, take that hill, or take the Straits of Hormuz. All right, good luck to you. You know, our mission is to take that, or is the mission is the abstract. The mission is, how do we clean up the, what influence can we have to clean up the economic mess that's been made by the United States and Israel jointly attacking Iran with nothing but an air power, thinking that they're going to collapse in a weekend. And here we are in week 5, and slated now to go a couple more months. Rubio said, a couple more months, another $200 billion. Why don't we jump into that? Because you're spending it anyway, even though the Congress hasn't approved it. And we're way over $39 billion now, well on our way to $40 billion. Because without a mission, objectives are disconnected. You don't know what they are. These disconnected actions in a war environment produce drift. You begin in one stated goal. What's the goal? Well, we don't know, because first it was decapitation. Then it was no. It's nuclear containment. Then it's, regime. Then it's, wait. We have to secure shipping lanes. Look what they've done. The Straits of Hormuz were open 5 weeks ago, weren't they? How are you going to secure the shipping lanes when you're the ones who destroyed them? You're the ones who closed them. What did you expect them to do? Sit there with their thumbs inserted and just wait? This is existential to them. So the U.S. has no objectives, therefore it doesn't have a mission. You can't take all those objectives and tie them together. This is catastrophic in military terms, because without a mission, all they're doing is buying time. Okay, but buying time to do what? He was quizzed about this, and I didn't like his answer. He said, buying time to buy time. Well, I don't agree with that. They're buying time because they don't know what else to do. And they're buying time to create a scenario where perhaps Trump, like a blind squirrel getting that nut anyway, is going to come out, and Hegseth and these two geniuses are gonna come to some level of success. But if the economic and military systems are both under strain, you don't just have a difficult war, you got a misaligned system. The economic base, no way, can comfortably support military expansion, especially when it is not anything guided by a clear strategic endpoint. This is frightening on many layers, not the least of which is Netanyahu. He said, you know what, Wilkerson, I think, I was the only one stupid enough to say anything like this before, or maybe not as controlled as others to say it, but he said the same thing. He said that he is of the same opinion that it's far more likely that Netanyahu will be the one to continue to continue to one-upsmanship, has to play it. And tell you what, these are frightening times. And when you go to people like John Mearsheimer, these are your more traditional role players. We have Mohamed Marandi. Sergey Lavrov gave a speech. John Mearsheimer talks about the structural defeat, the logic of it. Mohamed Marandi talks about Hormuz and the plans. Lavrov talks about the complete legal collapse of all the systems. And Vladimir Solovyov and company last night, that was the last thing that I watched, 2.5 hours of escalation psychology. So let's begin to talk about Odessa. Because remember, Venezuela, now Straits of Hormuz, the third one, the third pillar, Odessa, Black Sea port in Ukraine. This is important because that port, for Zelensky to get liquid natural gas or any other petroleum products, it must come through two sources. Either the Stream is how some of the oil parts can come up. He's got a slight potential to get it through the Greek one, whatever the name of that was. It comes a roundabout way, but both Serbia and Hungary are blocking their portions off, and then Transnistria is cutting off the approach to Ukraine through Moldova. And now the port of Odessa, which has been bombed heavily for months, is being destroyed. The infrastructure, the ability to bring in regular ships is really, really curtailed. And Ukraine, with Russia blocking off natural gas and fuel going outside of the country, they've stopped it until, I forget the date, June 30th or July 30th. They've just cut it off, said we're going to use it for our own purposes, not yours, not anybody else's. And so Zelensky knows he can't get it from America because America's going to need theirs. He knows he can't get it through the Red Sea. He can't get it through the Suez Canal. He cannot get it through the Straits of Hormuz. He can't have it shipped to him by anybody except through the Black Sea. And so he's over there trying to get that done, and he's down there raising alarms and saying now Russia has put these big satellites up that are competing with the internet capabilities that they've had about a 6-month period where they've been not as beat up before because Russia did have to figure out and move forward on the plans quicker than they intended to release their Sputnik system to allow them to use the internet. But now they have a series, and more and more are going up. You know, they're putting up quite a few every week, and it's designed to have 900. And as it keeps happening, they keep expanding. And so Ukraine, rightly so, is frightened, very frightened. They're no longer the preferred model. Rubio has a conversation with Kaja Kallas, the foreign minister for the EU, and that didn't go well, according to all accounts. He basically told her, you're on your own. We're not doing anything. We aren't escalating against Russia. You want to escalate against Russia, you go right ahead, but we're not. Well, they are indirectly, but this problem, there's a no-win framework. The calamity of it all is we don't have the natural capacity to get it done right now without edging right up to the fiscal cliff. Let's see. Let's talk about. Let's go to Mearsheimer. He doesn't argue from ideology, morality, sympathy. He talks about power distribution and the dynamics of escalation. And he said something. And by the way, virtually all of these people and any realistic person in military channels in the United States is coming to the same conclusion, but for different reasons. And it is the United States has entered into a war it cannot win. Okay? But the reasoning behind what he said that the war, this one is built on a familiar American assumption: shock, awe, decapitation, internal regime collapse, remove leadership, destabilize command, and the system will fail. It's the same logic that drove us into Iraq, Libya, Afghanistan, earlier interventions, none of which worked, by the way, long term. And that model fails here for similar reasons, but Iran is even worse for them because Iran is not structurally vulnerable in the same way that those places were. Decapitation strategy failed. The regime held on. The population has not collapsed. In fact, the opposite is occurring. Military retains operational capacity, which they do. And once that initial phase failed, the war is into something far more dangerous for the Western side more than the Iranian side, a protracted conflict. And in this long conflict, Iran holds the advantage at nearly every level of escalation, because they do. Escalation is not symmetrical. It doesn't affect both sides equally. One step upward, in every step upward, more strikes, more pressure, more force. They say they sent 850 Tomahawks, 850 so far into Iran. 850. Those things are not cheap, not remotely. And how many more we got to keep lobbing at them? No. The numbers aren't going to add up for very long. We can't give them. We can't continue that for any serious amount of time. So the balance shifts in favor of the actor whose tools are best suited for that environment. Each one of those Blackhawks is in the millions, multi-million, tens of millions of dollars, right? Each one. That airplane that got destroyed, the spy airplane, the Flying Command Center, one of 15 in the military, is nearly $1 billion for one plane. And by the way, you can't just repurpose another airplane, with that type of technology. You can't do it. Iran's tools are not conventional dominance. What do they have instead? They can disrupt the energy supply. clearly. They are regional exploitation of vulnerabilities of the GCC states. No problem. And asymmetrical strikes. They can continue to strike the Straits of Hormuz with their little mini subs, their mine-laying equipment. They could close that sucker off for a long time. And no taking of an island in the Karg Island isn't going to help. 15,000, 20,000 soldiers sent over. Those are not going to help. You ain't taking over Iran with 20,000 soldiers. 90 million people live there. Let's see. The geographic depth, the geography there, favors Iran big time, just like it favored Afghanistan and the people that were fighting there. What John Mearsheimer said, one of his quotes that I'm going to give to you is, "We are the Titanic heading toward the iceberg. And the iceberg is not military defeat, it's systemic disruption, because Iran does not need to defeat the United States militarily. It only needs to impose increased costs, economic costs, regional costs, logistical costs, to make this continuation of this war as unsustainable as the one in Iraq, as unsustainable as those in Syria, against the Houthis, that against anybody, Afghanistan, I mean, pick it, that against Vietnam for that matter." And so this takes you to what Marandi, and now Marandi, I tell you what, he's defining all of this. He shifts the battlefield completely. And he was on an interview. Who was he on with? What was that guy's name? I told it to you earlier. Cyril Jansen. You get a chance, you should watch this, or go out and listen to him at least. Get the words from somebody there. He says the war is being misinterpreted, certainly, because analysts are looking at airstrikes, troop deployments, and activity on the basis, but those aren't the decisive basis. He says that the factors that are decisive, the Straits of Hormuz, control of Hormuz, is not geographic. It's capability-based, and that's a critical correction that you need to understand. Western thinking assumes that control means ships, fleets, presence. Marandi rejects that entirely. He says that the control comes from Iran's long-range missile systems, their underground infrastructure, and the distributed strike capability. In other words, you don't need to occupy Hormuz to control it. You only need to threaten it credibly. And Iran can do that from hundreds of kilometers inland, okay? This means naval superiority is far less relevant, and they're sitting ducks in there anyway, according to our own Navy. Base positioning is vulnerable. Did you realize, and do you know, that American soldiers stationed in countries of the GCC aren't staying on their bases anymore? They're staying in local hotels. A lot of those bases are destroyed or partially destroyed, and they're having to find different living arrangements for people. It's all over the place. And Marandi pushed it for his argument goes a little bit further. He says, the United States is operating, this is one of his quotes, on an outdated military assumption. It says 20th century thinking in a system that has already gone past it. Aircraft carriers, forward bases, concentration of assets. If these were useful, they would have used them already, but they lost them all quickly to Iran. And you layer that onto what we already know from other, actually credible reporting. U.S. surveillance assets degraded. They've taken out some 10, 12, hundreds of millions of dollars in radar equipment taken out in the first 2 weeks. Radar systems have been targeted. Refueling infrastructure is hit. This is not random. They are targeting visibility, sustainment, Escalation transforms the short-term crisis into a long-term global economic disruption, which brings us back to Wolff, right? Wolff, the economic system cannot absorb a long-term disruption, can it? So now we have Mearsheimer, Marandi, and Wolff. Those are kind of a closed group. Then you got a guy who talks, now Lavrov, and he's pretty well spoken. I mean, this is a guy who's dealt with all of this for 26 years. Okay, he's not talking tactics, he's talking procedure. He says that the wars are being initiated during negotiations themselves, and that destroys diplomacy itself. And this is far more important than it sounds, people. This is important because this is what the rest of the world thinks of us. Not what we're over here saber rattling and talking about how wonderful we are because we outsmart everyone. It's deeper than that. Do you know Carney was on, the Prime Minister of Canada was on again talking about how they can't support what the U.S. is doing here, even though there's no way they can support what Iran has been doing for years. And he says, but that doesn't mean, we don't stand with them, that this is incorrect. What is going on, it shouldn't be going on. This is not in accordance with the UN Charter. It's not in accordance with anything. The rules-based scenario doesn't exist because we don't follow the rules. We truly do not, nor have we for a very, very long time. And now it's a blatant flaunting of any international rules. We haven't looked at them in forever. You don't have any UN threat. These are, according to many terms, and not just Lavrov, a lot of people in Europe too have said these are illegal wars. Illegal war in Venezuela, illegal war with Israel and U.S. against Iran. It was illegal last year. And of course, the rules don't apply if you're the biggest bully on the block. And so, but his statement goes further than that. He says, diplomacy isn't just communication. You're negotiating. During the negotiation, you bomb the hell out of Iran. Yeah, that's going to help, isn't it? As Ukraine, while you're meeting with the Russians, Boris Johnson comes and says, no, you can't do that. We disagree. And so you pull all the cards off the table and you take your toys and you go home saying, no, we'll beat them on the field. Well, good luck to you. You haven't done so far. This war could have been over 4 years ago if not for that idiot. It would have been done. Ukraine would have taken it. It might have started again, after people got involved, but at least there'd have been something. Many people, I am one of them, are afraid that this is going to turn into a prolonged and worse world war. Economic war, real war, depending on, who you get. So, get your food storage ready. Things aren't going to be easy, in my own humble opinion. And tell you what, the future negotiations are meaningless because nobody trusts us anymore at all. During the middle of negotiations, we bomb the crap out of you. During discussions, we support something else. Lavrov explicitly pointed to the same pattern that we all know: Iraq, Libya, Syria, Iran. Each intervention framed a little bit differently, but the similar trajectory: escalation followed by long-term destabilization. And he introduced one other one. This one has energy control as the policy objective. He circled back to where I came from. Venezuela and energy sector control, not incidental. It's right to my thought process. This goes right where I've been thinking ever since Venezuela. The conflicts are increasingly aligned with control of energy flow and infrastructure. So Venezuela, Iran, Ukraine are all connected, not as identical conflicts, but as, I don't know, separate nodes in a system of pipelines, shipping, resource access are all central. And maybe his framing is politically aligned. Of course it is. He supports Russia. But it definitely, you can see the economic layer quite a bit separately from the military layer. And, you know, if the Houthis can control access to the Red Sea, if Iran can control the Straits of Hormuz, what can we do to get around it? I mean, seriously, what is the end game? Nobody has said it. There was a meme shown yesterday of Trump, somebody asking him basically the same question, what is the end game? And he said, you're not a very nice person. That's what Trump said to the guy. You're not a very nice person. Well, you know, that's because you can't answer that question. We don't know what the end game is. And there's more people. And this is nonsense because, unfortunately, I think people are starting to believe this. And it's stupidity, truthful. Is the Straits of Hormuz are going to now be called the Trump Strait? I mean, geez, we have the Gulf of Trump, you know, downstairs, downstairs, down south of, the Gulf of Mexico is, the Gulf of Trump, the Gulf of America. I mean, who gives us a crap, what it's called? What difference does it make? But that's the important part for a lot of people. And what is, who's going to rule? Okay, who's going to rule Iran? Trump says, me. Who's going to rule Venezuela? Well, me. We'll pick. We'll pick the next leader. I get to pick the next leader. I mean, what kind of stupidity and arrogance is that? I get to pick the next leader. It's me. I'm king of the world. Who's the next leader of Greenland? Oh, yeah, me. Who's the next leader of Cuba? Oh, me. Hey, we'll send Marco. We'll send a little Marco down there to make sure that he rules it for a little while. Where in the hell is J.D. Vance in all this? Tell you what, I think the boy's been sidelined. Solovyov was that was a raw show. I'm telling you, those guys were on a roll, and they were talking 2.5 hours, but it was a joy to watch. And you know what I really like about that show? I like the format. I've told you that before. I really love the fact that they have so many people to lean upon. He has one guy in particular. I wish I could remember his name off the top of my head, but I can't. And he's on there. Nearly every Sunday, I'd say. There's a couple of my favorites. One's a Ukrainian lawyer who basically is in Russia now, and I forget his name. Very, very well spoken, very a professional-looking guy, and I like listening to him. And then there's an artist that he brings in, and he's a political discourse person and an artist, and so. It's always funny to me. I'm sitting there going, why in the world does an artist come in here? That'd be like, me picking Tom Hanks is my, or what's her name that went over to Ukraine? The hot ex-wife of well, crap, I can't remember his name either. I'm running out of names on these actresses that I really like. And, I like their movies. Their politics suck, and I have friends who won't watch particular movies because this person is too political. I don't give a crap. I like a movie or I don't like a movie based on what I'm watching, like Tom Hanks. He's got some good movies. He was in Big. What was he when he was in... the You've Got Mail movie, whatever that was, where he met Meg Ryan, and he had some. Yeah, I liked him in Saving Private Ryan. That was probably a bit overboard, but I liked that movie. And but I hated him in that idiotic one with the volleyball. And he's stuck on an island. That movie was slow and stupid. But I liked him in Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump. I think it was. I try not to judge people based on their politics. Anyway, I've deviated from my original brief, but let's get to it. So the panel in Solovyov talked about how come Ukraine can target decision centers? How come the U.S. and Lavrov talked about this too? Because this offends me, and you know. Listening, it offends me, and I've talked about it before. The decapitation strikes are offensive. I think that's horseshit, period. And Trump and company and Hegseth, the JV quarterback, jumping up and talking about, oh, just kill him. We'll do what we do the best. We go out and we kill individuals. They go after individuals to kill. Now, anywhere else, that would be murder. But if you're, in the Pentagon or in the White House, it's perfectly feasible. CIA kill missions, that's all right. Why can't we do it? Well, in that case, why in the hell did you waste everybody's time bringing Maduro here to put in a prison? Why didn't you just friggin' kill him and be done with it? It's decapitation. How come you can justify it all over? Iran just killing named individuals along with Benjamin Netanyahu, and you couldn't justify it in Venezuela. What difference does it make? If this is how we're running the world, then fine. And this is what all the Russian commentators are thinking. Why are we doing the same thing? When these become legitimate targets, why aren't we doing the same? Now, these are people who are not political people. They are, but they're not government officials. These are politicians, right? Or political commentators, I mean. And the politicians, they're a little better behaved. Your Lavrovs of the world, he brings up questions, and he might bring up the question, well, if decapitation strikes are, the future, then why aren't we engaging in them as well in Ukraine? Why aren't we? Most countries, you realize the depth of evil that you are committing if you're not in trying to engage in discussion. And you could say, well, you can't have a discussion with these type of people. You can't have a discussion with Zelensky. You can't have a discussion with anybody in the West if you're from Russia. You are a non-entity. You won't even claim to know Russian when you damn well do. You won't even accept the language. So I don't know. The escalation doctrine. Europe is unwilling to act. NATO is hesitant. The U.S. is stretched. This is all the perception that Western deterrence doctrines are weak, and they're getting weaker all of the time. So if you pull all these together, from Mearsheimer, which says that escalation favors Iran, Marandi, the mechanism is energy plus the asymmetrical reach we have, Lavrov, diplomacy is broken, Solovyov and company, escalation is now normalized, decapitation is normal. And from part one, when I spoke about this way back when, the U.S. system is already constrained economically. That means there's no clean path forward. There is no end game. Nobody knows what it is. Nobody's told us what the end game is. You know why? Because they don't know themselves. Trump doesn't know what the end game is. I've heard so many different stories about what it is. Nuclear deterrent. Lindsey Graham, they were going to push a button. They were going to blow up. We had to attack them first. The guy's in reality, and Lindsey Graham rarely collide in the same environment there, Escalation increases risk, but they're stuck in it. De-escalation looks like defeat. Negotiation has no credibility because you're either going to kill people while they're negotiating or bomb around them. And then the time just keeps expanding the economic pressures. time. This is a closed strategic environment. This is not, things are not open right now. And there's no way out of this loop. None. Now, I wanted to bring up, because this is important, this isn't a battlefield problem. It's a structure problem. Structure doesn't collapse all at once. They just collapse as soon as everything is made so much worse. And think about this. The global system, I brought this all together for you. Energy, Odessa, the port on the Black Sea for Ukraine, Iran, Straits of Hormuz, the Houthis in the Red Sea, the strait down at the bottom there that connects two together, they can control both sides of that and block that up. Nobody's getting out. So what happens when the rest of the world is operating on the reality already that there's no clean strategic pathway, because they are? Europe is, Asia is, everywhere is. There's talk that Australia doesn't have enough, that they've caused limits. Philippines, they've put limits in the amount of gas you can buy. Like you can't fill up your car, you can only buy 5 gallons, right? It is what they're saying. And these realities are occurring. And so what happens when the rest of the world is already operating on that reality? I told you last week about India and the Times of India and the Palmi Sharma. I can't remember her name. Palki Sharma, I believe. They're very, very good on Times of India or whichever one it was. And there was another one that I listened to that is important to look at, because these are global, these are big time events and where this energy come from. So what happens when the rest of the world is operating on the reality? The war is no longer contained in military boundaries. It's already moved into the global systems. Europe is under extreme pressure. Asia is under extreme pressure, and China is even under pressure. So is Russia. But Russia is benefiting enormously by the cost of oil going up. Hundreds of millions of dollars increase today. They're almost selling at full cost of oil right now, regardless. Remember, Trump had to lift sanctions against Iran and against Russia. Crazy. Energy markets, supply chains, diplomatic alignment, and economic survival, because a lot of other things. No helium coming through Straits of Hormuz. No fertilizer coming through any of those areas. And India is horribly dependent on that fertilizer. And their planting season is upon us right now. And in this environment, the rest of the world is already adapting in real time. So are we, by the way, with our extra $1.20 a gallon, and our gasoline prices. We're doing the same thing. Filled up my tank yesterday, Saturday, which one of the 2 days? $108. $108. And it wasn't long ago at all that it cost me $70. So, less than a month or two. 108, okay, it's only $30, 40, whatever. It's not the end of the world, is it? How many times is that going to happen? And gee, what about how much is it going to cost me now, because I can't, I won't pay $4.80 a gallon for Supreme once every 3 tanks. I won't do it. I'm not going to pay $140. That's crazy. And but apparently I will at some point, because it ain't going to go down. The prices are not going to go down. The rest of the world is starting to deal with this. What's the Zelensky signal, right? This is his government scrambling for fuel. This is the clearest, most visible example of what's happening when the logistics and not the ideology is beginning to drive your policy. And Zelensky has been traveling through Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, not only for diplomatic theater, but for something else, fuel. that is all confirmed. Ukraine faces a severe diesel shortage. 90% of its fuel deficit is specifically tied to diesel, which is absolutely essential for military operations and basic infrastructure. So what does he do? He goes to the Gulf. He signs defense agreements. He offers drone expertise. He sends Ukrainian drone specialists to assist the Gulf states. And in return, what is he after? Diesel supply agreements, energy cooperation, long-term logistic support. Now think about that. Ukraine, the centerpiece of Western military support, allegedly, that we helped create a 1 million-man army for over the last 20 years, is now bartering its own battlefield expertise for fuel. Does that show strength, or is that a logistics strain of grand proportion? Because this is happening at the same time that Ukraine is entangled in its own energy dispute with Europe itself. Pipeline disruption, diesel export suspension, no electricity coming in from Slovakia or Hungary. Ukraine needs this energy flow. So now you have a country fighting a war, losing access to energy routes, negotiating abroad for fuel, and pressuring or receiving pressure from its own would-be allies. You know, they're fighting literally with Slovakia, Hungary, Serbia, although everybody down there, because they don't want to let them have any Russian petroleum or gas products. Odessa, I've already talked about. It's a fuel intake point, a logistics hub, and a maritime lifeline. And England has put butt tons of money into that over the last 30 years, and now it's just being blown up in front of them. If Ukraine is seeking fuel from the Middle East, it's got to run through that maritime route, be stored, and then transported inland. And so if you blow up Odessa and its surrounding logistics corridors, they're all critical nodes. What has Russia been attacking over the last month? Odessa, shipping, and all rail. There was a story I saw a couple of days ago that said that literally 90% of Ukrainian rail lines are delayed, like massive delays, days long in delays. And Russia is blowing up. They're targeting engines, diesel and electric railroad train engines, and they're blowing them up. It's not a coincidence. This is how Russia is getting more money. They didn't even have to fire a shot, and they suddenly are getting, suddenly the oil prices are making it again. The global energy system is so much under strain that maybe it doesn't affect us. It does. I just told you about my extra dollar in at least per gallon in gas. India talks about escalation versus deterrence, diplomacy versus force. The system is unstable and must be navigated. India, maintaining access to energy flows, through Russia. Continue trading relationships and avoiding direct alignment either with Iran or with the United States. And it's still receiving some energy through Hormuz. It's not universally closed. It's open for India, China, Pakistan, and the yuan, if you pay in yuan. It's restricted for those who are aligned with the West. That isn't chaos. That's targeted economic warfare, and it reveals something very crucial. The global system is no longer binary. It is not the West versus its adversaries. It's a fragmented, multipolar network, and countries are acting based on their own survival, not ideology. Same pattern as Venezuela, different justification. This is The U.S. is creating, what was that you always used to put? Your body's writing, your body's right. No. Your hand is writing checks your body can't keep, or something like that. Some famous movie. But this is what we're doing in America. We sling the same old crap. New language for Venezuela. Narco-terrorism. That was brand new. Something we get a claim that we're fighting for, right? And it proves something important when you switch to oil. The stated objective is not the real objective, because if it were, removing the leadership would have ended the operation. What's the real line here? Energy, Venezuela, Iran, Ukraine. That's it. So what's the most important critical piece of all of this? The narrative being presented domestically is still being spouted out as if the objectives are clear. They are not. They can't tell you today the same thing that they told you yesterday. We're going to take Karg Island. Oh, so that's the objective? Was it ever the objective before you started decapitating Iran? No, it wasn't. The Straits of Hormuz. We need to open the Straits of Hormuz. Well, if you hadn't have bombed in the first place, you dumb moron, it would still be open. It was open before you started bombing. So, that is not your justification. If you knew what your objectives were before you bombed, perhaps you could have achieved them. You said it was decapitation. We need to get rid of this regime. Second, we need to get rid of nuclear weapons. They're after nuclear weapons. Third, we have to deter them from attacking us. They haven't attacked us. They might have attacked Israel. Jesus, who'd blame them? Israel's bombing the crap out of them every day. And other places, Israel's on a hunt to take over far more land over there. Gaza became Trump Tower 2 or something way back a year and a half ago. And now they're trying to, fine, he can have Gaza. We'll take Lebanon. This is nuts. They just keep expanding and nobody questions it at all. Killing of journalists, any of that. There are no trusted mediators. We have shifting war goals. We have logistical strains and no stable negotiations. But we're still acting as if everything is manageable and we're in the right framework. What we are watching now, unfortunately, is not a series of disconnected crises, but a single system under a vast amount of pressure. When you see Ukraine scrambling for fuel, sending its president across the Gulf to secure diesel, trying to keep basic operations running, while at the same time, the Strait of Hormuz is being selectively controlled with global energy flow so disrupted and prices rising around the world that they're limiting it in Pakistan, in many, many countries. They are limiting the amount of fuel you can put in your car. And, Venezuela is in place still under different justification, but the same patterns. And all this is unfolding, and the domestic narrative continues to present this war. The Trump administration continues to present this war as controlled, strategic, and contained. But it isn't. And the rest of the world has already adjusted to that reality. The only question is, how long will it take the U.S. to do the same? Seriously. Those of us who are paying for gas, we're already doing it. We're already adjusting. We are curtailing trips. We are not, planning different over the summer, what we're going to do, This is where we go back to John Mearsheimer, because he doesn't argue from ideology or from preference. He talked about the structure, remember? He talked about escalation, and his conclusion wasn't subtle. Not at all. The U.S. has entered a war it cannot win. Not because it doesn't have military capability in a conventional sense, but because the structure of the conflict favors the opponent as you continue to escalate. The assumptions that shaped the opening phase of the war, leadership decapitation, sustained bombing, internal pressure, would cause collapse and ruin, just like they thought would happen in Russia. And, these mistaken beliefs have already proven false. Iran has not collapsed. Its leadership has not disintegrated. Its command structure is resilient, and its ability to continue to launch strikes demonstrates that the initial phase of the war has not produced any decisive outcome that is expected. And once that fails, the conflict won't reset. It'll transform into a protracted conflict. And the question is no longer who can strike harder in the short term, but who can sustain pressure over the long term while imposing costs on the other side. And this is where I say, and where Mearsheimer argues, that Iran holds the cards, because as you move up the escalation ladder, the nature of the conflict shifts away from conventional dominance and multi-hundreds of $million missiles to small drones that cost $5,000 and are, inflicting damage like crazy, and the huge amount of underground arsenal still in place and by the way, I watched an interesting show on that said that we took out Hegseth. We got 95% of all their stuff. We destroyed them last year. We killed everybody. Well, if you have, how in the hell are they still bombing the crap out of you? Where is the Iron Dome in Israel? Why in the world are we able to blow that crap up? Why can't Israel come up with, Netanyahu says he's going to activate another 400,000. He activated 300,000 not 3 months ago, and a third of them didn't show up. What makes you think the 400,000 are going to show up? And how many of those will come in? If it's 2/3, well, that only gives you, 240 or so? Or 250, who knows, somewhere in there. But even then, what are you fighting for? They're getting blown up all over the place. Once the phase, the conflict is going to be a protracted. It was going to be 3-4 days. Oh, geez, it'll be done in a weekend in time for me to go see Xi Jinping and put him in his place. Say, sorry, energy's mine. Here's some more tariffs for you, if the Supreme Court doesn't overturn them. I don't know, friends and neighbors. Things are looking not all that positive as the war continues to escalate with zero off rampage. We got nothing. I encourage you to go listen to the Professor Wolff video on your own. I think that was a hell of a good discussion that he had there. I believe that was with Professor Dyson, the guy from Norway. It was pretty cool. Diesen, I think it's called. Well, I'm Samuel Trapp. This is International Flavor. We come to you every Monday through Thursday. Hopefully it's a little warmer in, and over the weekend. It was a little on the nipply side for me. Did I say nipple? Oh, horror story. At any rate, I encourage you to listen to, what do we got coming up here? Shield Maidens of Missouri coming up right after me. Going to be good stuff. Hope you listen. Hope you join us in every day this week. And on Friday with Civic Outlaws. Very interesting topics. Got a few extremely cool meetings going on in that regard this week with some influential and interesting people. So I shall try to keep you posted come Friday. So I hope you have a very good mid-Missouri day this happy Monday. And I will see you tomorrow at 7:30. Very nice day.